Hello and welcome everyone to today's webinar on Kellum Island, a Sustainable Neighbourhood Vision. This webinar is part of the RTPI Online Series 2020, brought to you by the RTPI Yorkshire. My name is Filip Chafol-Silenko and I'm chair of the RTPI Yorkshire. We're very pleased to welcome you all to this special webinar, and we are joined by RTPI President Sue Manns. If I just may introduce her briefly, Sue is a graduate of both University of Sheffield and University of Manchester. She started her long career at Birmingham City Council. She was also a senior lecturer at the University of Central England, as well as Associate Director of Arab and the Regional Director at Pegasus Planning. Since 2018, Sue is running her own practice, and she is specializing in best practice consultation and community engagement. Please, Sue, could I ask you to say a few opening words at this point? That would be really greatly appreciated.
Well, thank you very much for that kind introduction, Philip. And as you probably picked up, yes, I was studying at Sheffield University, and I actually stayed on and lived in Sheffield for another couple of years after I graduated. And so that gave me 5 years in total, and it was a wonderful 5 years, and it feels very much like coming home. I know the area very, very well, and I often visit, but a little known fact is that I actually spent a summer working at the Bassett Sweet Factory in Hillsborough on the production line, and that really was an introduction to Sheffield at the time of the full Monty. So it's been a long and very, very positive relationship with Sheffield and also with Yorkshire. All three of my sons, as well as myself, came to university in Yorkshire, 2 of them at Sheffield. So a real family connection. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this. And I'm really, really looking forward to the session that we've got coming up.
Thank you, Sue. You're very much welcome. Thanks for joining us today. I'd like to continue by introducing today's speakers. We've got 2 presentations for you today. Presentation 1 is given by Chris McKinney. Chris is Deputy Chair of Kellum Island and Neepsend Neighbourhood Forum and Deputy Chair basically of the steering group. He is also a local resident of Little Kellum and also RC member at the RTPI East Midlands. Welcome, Chris. He's also joined by Ben McGarry. Ben is chair of the Kellum Island and Neepsend Community Alliance. Hello, Ben. And for our second presentation, we've got John Cleven from CITU. John is Senior Development Manager at CITU and will do the second presentation of Little Kellum in Kellum Island. Just a note before we start, this session will last for 90 minutes in total. Will be broken in 3 parts. As I already mentioned, we've got the first part with the 2 presentations. Second part would be then the 30-minute discussion with our panel and with our panel speakers, and a final 20-minute session of question and answer for our attendees. For the second part, I would like to welcome as well our speakers. So Chris and Ben, as well as John, are joined by Andy Cook. He is chair of KINF steering group. Also by Brooke Shipley. She is also part of the KINF steering group, and she does the lead on the heritage, arts and culture. We've got also Rob McMenemy. He is a secretary at KINF, and Anders Hansen. He is part of the steering group and he has the transport lead. I would like also welcome Councillor Douglas Johnson. He is a member of the Green Party in Sheffield, and he will join us for the second part of the discussion. Okay, I hope I've got everyone so far. And importantly, last but not least, in the final part, we're taking questions from you. So please submit your questions. You can find by using the chat section on the right-hand side of your screen. You can do that at any time throughout the presentation, and we will do our best to get as many responses back to you as possible. Okay, so let's start with the presentations. I ask Chris, could you start off, and you will then be joined by Ben with your presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Philip. Thank you, and welcome, President Sue. Welcome, RTPI members. My name is Chris McKinney. As Philip was saying, RTPI member, Deputy Chair of the Neighbourhood Forum. Sorry we can't greet you here in person today, but this webinar format gives me the opportunity to say I'm broadcasting to you live from the world famous Yellow Arch Studios, music venue and recording studio. This famous building, or perhaps more accurately complex of buildings, started life in 1875 as a nuts and bolts factory. But Andy Cook, our chair, found it derelict in '96, middle of a small industrial area that was quite run down. But he had permission from the City Council to make as much noise as he wanted to. And so he's built up a business, a 25,000 square foot of creative art space, a great music venue, has over the years seen artists such as the Arctic Monkeys, Pulp, Sister Sledge, Dwayne Eddy, Tony Christie, have all played and recorded here. And I can say now with the RTPI, hurrah! So I'll just get the presentation up and running. So again, thank you for coming. So why Kellum Island and Neepsend? So, well, this place is where Sheffield's steel industry started. Due to opportunities of the river, the natural power of the River Don, generating energy for the industries.
Chris, sorry,
yes?
I don't think we can see your presentation.
I think I forgot to click on share screen after all that.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, we can see it.
Brilliant. Let's go back. So yeah, so again, why Kellum? So now we've got this conservation of historic fabric against cutting edge architecture and innovative housing design. We've got cultural industries, those long-standing businesses. We've also, if you like your real ale, it's a great place to live. It's the home of Sheffield's real ale industry, and that's acted as a catalyst for a growing hospitality sector and visitor destination. And because, again, how the market works, so interest in the redevelopment here, that's led to the need for greater and better planning. And so the local community has looked at finding a way of getting a voice in planning. And so the neighbourhood plan and establishing the forum has given them that opportunity. There's a kind of slightly fuzzy image of the what's now the museum, but was essentially a tram power station but that's part of the island. There's a little bit of what it looks like now here at the museum, and again, just seeing how the area has kind of been brought forward. I talked a little bit about the community. At this point in time, I'm going to bring in Ben McGarry as the chair of the Community Alliance. So Ben, if you can come in, I'll do the slides for you, and then I'll take it from there.
Okay. Kellum Island's it's mainly it's a regenerated area. It's taken a long time, a slow burn regeneration. And it's got two sections to it. It has Kellum Island itself, which is mainly residential, a lot of apartments, mainly apartments, although CITU, you get a presentation from later, have actually been more innovative in providing townhouses and other forms of residence. And then there's Neepsend, which is the other side of the river. It's still part of our neighbourhood, but is mainly manufacturing, or it used to be mainly manufacturing. Now it's all sorts of businesses and hospitality as well. We're a project-based organisation, so we're not one of the kind of, we used to have a lot of complaining about everything. So we decided to shift the focus onto interesting projects, and we have a number of about 13 or 14 different projects. So there's something for everybody to participate in, and they're all community volunteers, so nobody's paid. We're a registered charity, and that gives us a bit more standing, but it also gives us a bit more discipline. And there are about plus or minus 5,000 residents in this area, and probably well over 150 businesses of all sizes. We have probably about 25 pubs and cafes in a very small area, so it's very much hospitality as well as manufacturing. And our purpose was originally to try and engage the community, to get people out of their apartments and getting to know each other, to deal with building friendships and activities, and also to look after the area. So although it's an industrial conservation area, we have the River Don running through it, and we have lots of nature. We also have a goit, which was an offshoot of the river in order to power the water mills. And that goit is now a nature reserve with over 170 different types of plants and fish and kingfishers and goodness knows what, but that's right in the heart of our community. So we look after that as well in partnership with a number of partners. Can I have the next slide, please? So we have a number of projects. Our original one was the community market. We don't have an open public space, community space, because of the legacy of the industrial nature. But we do have bridges because of the river. So a few times a year, the council gives us permission to close off one of the bridges, and we turn that into a community space. And we have a food market and a makers market and all sorts of things like that. We also have river clearing, as I mentioned earlier. So we do river clearing usually in winter to cut back on things. We have regular litter picking. It's hugely popular, the litter picking. So that happens every 2 weeks. Then we've got the Arts and Heritage Trail. So we have a colony, or whatever you might call it, a collective of artists in one of the old buildings that's slightly derelict. So it's quite cheap to rent there. So artists have moved in. And we initially had a problem with tagging and graffiti. That was one of the complaints. And so we started an Arts and Heritage Trail that allows the local artists to paint. Initially it was telephone communication boxes, you know, these kind of boxes, cabinets that you see on the street that got a lot of graffitiing. And so we have we started getting local artists to paint and businesses to sponsor. So these boxes are now, then we've got about, I think, 21 are now across the island in all sorts of different designs with a bit of history to them. Then we have a beekeeping project. So we started that about 2 years ago, and that's a community beekeeping project. We work together with other partners in parts of the city. We're an enclave, as you'll probably see later in the presentation. We're a bit of an enclave because we're bounded by a railway line and a dual carriageway. But we have very diverse communities either side of us. And so we were trying to permeate the boundaries a bit and join some of the neighbouring communities. A lot of the neighbouring communities are resource poor, and Sheffield Street Games is really to try and get kids in more deprived areas engaged in sporting activities. So we partnered up with the museum, and we had the first Kellum Games, and that brought kids from all over Sheffield, from poorer areas, to play all sorts of kinds of games, and to get instruction and mentoring. So it was everything from weightlifting with female weightlifters who were hugely popular with a lot of the young Muslim girls, and ping pong and parkour and all sorts of things. So that was very successful. And Brooke, who is also on our team, who's in this webinar with us, she was one of the organisers for that. Then we have a green Kellum project because although we have green on the river, we don't have green anywhere else. So that's a big project to try and green up the area in various innovative ways. And we also have Naomi's Walk, which was a partnership, a young woman who got killed in a car accident, and her co-workers in one of the businesses here wanted to do something for her. So we all got together and we decided that we were going to create a green walk with a green space and dedicate it to her. So that's been a participative process, and that's actually we managed to get a grant from Heritage Lottery to do that properly. So that's a work in progress. And then we have the Neighbourhood Forum. And I don't want to take away Chris's fire or anybody else's, but we were sick to death of going to planning committee meetings and objecting to sort of really grotty, tiny little apartments being put up because they were cheap and made lots of money for developers. But we got no kind of proper support from the council planning committee. And then we heard about the statutory neighbourhood forum, so we decided that we would set up a more statutory body, and that's how the neighbourhood forum came about. In fact, all the people who are in Kinka are also in the neighbourhood forum as well. It's an instrument for engaging with planning and development. And then during COVID-19, we also had a number of projects we started, especially when people were locked down and isolated in their apartments. So we set up immediately, actually within 24 hours, one of our group set up a helpline. We got an old mobile phone, we got a number, and we put up posters across the island and on our social media for people if they wanted shopping or they needed to get medicines or they just needed someone to talk to. And that was hugely successful. We got 100 people volunteering in that process. Then we've got a community hub. So our local community shop, which is a deli, that became a bit of a hub for people to come and talk and just see somebody else, you know, if they were in lockdown. We've also got a community art project we started. So we tried to do something that everybody could do when they were isolated in their homes and they couldn't go out because we were in that strict lockdown. So the artist group provided wet clay tiles for anybody who wanted to. You could come and pick them up from the hub, from the community hub, the store, pick them up in safety, take them home, put any kind of design on you wanted. And so we got one of the artists who leads the artist group to do a short video about what techniques you could use and all that kind of stuff to demo it for people. They then did their things. They came back. They then were fired in the artist kiln, and then they were returned, and you could pick them up again from the community store and paint them. And so we have a painting. I didn't put a picture in for that, but I should have done. Anyway, and then we had a community archaeology project. So we do a lot of work with the university, different departments, urban planning, landscaping, health, different departments, because we're very close to the university, and so it's easy for them to send students down here, master's students usually, to work on various projects. And so we work in partnership with them. One of which came up was the archaeology department wanted to do something with children, and so it was one of our ideas to bring children from the neighboring neighborhoods with kids from around here, and then to actually dig down into the history of the neighborhood and find out what was on their street 100 years ago, or what was on their street 200 years ago. And because of COVID-19, we couldn't do that physically. So the university set up an app for us where they could overlay maps, and the students could then rummage around on the app on their smartphones to do the project. And then we also had individual litter picking. So the community hub, the store, we put lots of litter pickers there and bags, so that if people, when they were doing their daily exercise, you know, when we were allowed out for a walk a day or something, people could come, and loads of people actually wanted to do litter picking as well. So they could come and pick up the equipment at the store. We also promoted Buy Local, of course. And then during lockdown, the council has also introduced traffic calming for us. So we've been lobbying for a long time to try and get rat runs across the neighbourhoods to be eliminated, and to look at more friendly streets and everything else. So we now have some street closures. They're experimental, to stop, which has successfully stopped the rat run. But we've also got the bridge that we normally have the community market on. That's been closed off as well with planters. And we're going to be lobbying quite hard to have that made permanent, so that we have a permanent space, which would be the bridge. Anyway, that's enough for me.
Thank you, Ben. So this again, just that was on the celebrations after Kellum Island won the Best Neighbourhood Award a couple of years ago. So again, why that need for a neighbourhood forum? So you've heard from Ben kind of a lot about an active community, but again, there's been lots of redevelopment rumours about sites coming forward, planning applications then being submitted to the City Council. the community kind of looking at those applications and the proposed developments and going, well, actually, this isn't kind of what we feel's right for our area. So, and as you say, Kinker's had great engagement with the City Council, but that didn't seem to carry across when applications are being determined. Now, again, for the planners, and that's mostly the audience here today, we know that there's rules and there's regulations, and that planning law requires that applications for planning permission be determined in accordance with the development plan, unless material considerations indicate otherwise. Now, we all say that probably kind of relatively quickly in our sleep now. But Sheffield City planning policy is quite old. You know, the UDP last millennia, the core strategy 2009. So both of those prior to the NPPF, the National Planning Policy Framework, the current 5-year supply test, housing delivery test. And so all of those concerns that are being channeled and supported by local ward members up against, again, officers' report, often getting dismissed in light of the need for housing. A kind of a familiar story, I imagine, to most of you. But then localism, kind of the acts are kind of bubbling away in the background, government saying lovely things about localism. So Kinker approached the city, managed to get the area designated in November 2018. We managed to then get the forum established in February, and then we start to have meetings and get our AGM and get up and running. For those of you who don't know the area, this is the neighbourhood area. So you can just make out the river snaking through the middle of that. Kellum Island is the kind of south west kind of part. Neepsend, roughly the northern bit. You've got a straight line at the top. That's the railway line that Ben was talking about. The line on the other side is the ring road. Putting that into context, you've got the city centre quarters, all 10 of them or so, and Kellum and Neepsend's up at the top. Roughly see the shape again. So after our AGM, we got people appointed and elected to the steering group. We set about beginning our preparation of our labour plan. And again, for those policy planners out there, you can probably tell that's what my background. We kind of ran initial consultation, a bit like your Reg 18s. That was back in October 2019. Kind of finding out what people and the business, asking them several questions to see what should drive change, and what should be visions, what's thoughts on housing, employment, shops and facilities, and then environmental. So it's again trying to tease out of the community something that we can work with. That gave us our consultation statement. Again, mirroring some of the local plan preparation. So getting that written up, that has now become our kind of manifesto. Most people now in the steering group recognise me saying this is this is the touchstone for what we do, and the community have said they want more greenery in public space. That balance between its industrial past and residential character shouldn't be lost. We should be become more of an established community, and this is a kind of a key kind of finding how again that hospitality, that real ale but bar kind of night culture, evening culture. We don't want to be seen as just a kind of a area that people come, drink and go. We want to be a more established community, and to help that, less of the one beds for rent. That means that people just pass through our area, but more family homes. There's a few photos of the assets we've got down here. Again, it's an attractive industrial kind of conservation area, heritage-led regeneration, for those who've been around long enough to know that, remember that. Recent developments, Little Kellum, so something that will kind of come in, and John will talk about more. And our next steps, really just, again, developing our proposals and projects, working with bodies. And this is, again, some of the things that groups like a Neighbourhood Forum can kind of get involved in, speaking to landowners and developers about their proposals prior to application. And that has started to come through now. We start to have landowners, potential developers come to us saying, well, we're kind of thinking about doing this. We're aware you're around now. How can we, what are your interests? And it's through that kind of informal meetings that a community really gets its voice into the planning process much earlier. And we all kind of aim to get a kind of draft local plan out, or neighbour plan out early in the new year. So there's a couple of questions, but I think at this point, Philip and Sarah, I'll kind of stop sharing my screen and let John come in. So okay, I think that's worked. So John, over to you. I will turn my mic and camera off.
Thank you very much, Chris. Thanks for your presentation. Here you go, John. Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Chris. I'll just bring mine up. How is that?
Perfect. Yeah.
Lovely. Okay. Okay, thanks, Chris. So just a quick intro of myself. So I'm John Cleffin. I'm the Senior Development Manager at CITU. And before I introduce the Little Kellum scheme, which is a mixed-use development in Kellum Island, as Chris mentions, I think I'll tell you a little bit about CITU itself as a developer. So CITU was founded in 2004 by Chris Thompson, now Managing Director. And the business has one clear purpose, and that's to accelerate the transition to zero carbon cities. Now, the part that we play in supporting cities to become zero carbon is to create desirable places that have low carbon, energy efficient homes, places that promote low carbon modes of transport, and places that are socially sustainable as much as they are environmentally sustainable. And by this I mean that they have a mix of housing that responds to the local need. There is workspace for businesses, there are shops and restaurants for the community to use and enjoy. In terms of the new homes then that we build, the way that they achieve their low carbon status is really through 4 areas of endeavour. Firstly, they are made from wood, structurally insulated panels, and as a building material, wood has a negative carbon footprint, so extremely good in that regard. Secondly, they're very well insulated. So we use recycled glass wool, which makes them 3 times better at retaining heat than traditionally built new homes. Thirdly, they're extremely airtight, so 10 times better than building reg requirements in terms of their performance on airtightness. And fourthly, all homes need fresh air running through them. Well insulated, airtight homes get that through mechanical ventilation, and CITU is no different. The mechanical ventilation that we use recovers heat, so the stale air that's exiting the home passes fresh air that's being brought in and transfers around 90% of the heat that was inside in the stale air going out. It transfers it into the fresh air coming in. And ultimately, all of these factors culminate into homes that need no central heating and use up to 10 times less energy per year than a comparable traditionally built home does. Okay, so that sets the scene in terms of who we are and our product. Let's talk about Little Kellum. So here's the site, and it's from a picture back in, I believe, around the 50s. And you can see that historically it was a collection of factories, like Chris and Ben mentioned. There were a lot around down in Kellum Island, and it was there making a variety of steel products. CITU bought the site in 2012, and at that point the majority of the buildings had been demolished, save for those that, despite their condition, needed to be retained due to them having a protected status. There was an existing planning application approved at the time, which was predominantly for an apartment-led scheme. However, as I've just mentioned, this did not fit with our view of what would support a sustainable community. The area itself, yes, pretty industrial, but also it was edge of city red light district, in all fairness, which is a very undesirable place for family housing. So the challenge that we were faced with was how to create a place that embraced the heritage, that gave new life to the existing, and built as well striking new homes that would be equally as appealing to families as well as the young and as well as the older generation. So on all our housing sites at CITU, create reasonably high density schemes. Now, a higher density sure does make the scheme more financially viable, which Ben and Chris made reference to in terms of previous developers down in Kellum Island. But also for us, what it does, it encourages social mixing, and it reduces the dominance of the car. So any car parking goes under croft, and we literally elevate the green amenity space up above for people to use. You can see from this concept design 3D image there that there is density and height to the housing. You can also see how the sawtooth roof line of the house design mimics the factory roofs that were once there. The development overall has 146 homes. Over 50 of those are 3 and 4 bed family homes. It also has commercial space for offices, for shops, for restaurants, and potentially other services. So it was 2014 that we set about repairing, refurbishing, and converting the existing buildings and building up the modern from the traditional, and just trying to blend the new with the old on the site. Now in 2020, we're nearly at the end of the development as it is. And I hope you'll see through the next photos that I flick through that we think we certainly managed to retain the bold industrial feel, and added to that some quite striking modern forms and elevations. And we've also created some social spaces for people to enjoy and for restaurants and cafes to spill out into. We've incorporated some shops and also some offices that provide employment and bring more life to the place, people coming and going. Okay, I want to spend just a moment or two focusing on the family housing that we have down at Little Kellum, because the garden house, as it's called, it really does challenge the norm in terms of family housing. So the shared garden, which you can see there, the grass in the middle, it's elevated to the first floor level, and it sits above the site's undercroft car parking spaces. Each home, you can see there, has its own patio area, but the grass in the middle is a social space for everyone to use. And it is used. Barbecues, parties, not in these times, but previous. Now here's the layout of our typical 4-bed. It's over 3 floors. And you can see the ground floor on the far left-hand side. People actually enter their homes through their garage. Odd, some might say, but it certainly does help with heat retention. And then they proceed up to the first floor where the living area starts. Now these homes, despite their unconventional nature and layout, have proved very popular. And in fact, perhaps is because of their unconventional nature and layout that they are so popular. As you can see, that there is a little private terrace on the top floor, the far right layout there. And I think in denser housing schemes where outdoor space is predominantly shared and social space, it's really important not to forget about the need for privacy. And that's important in terms of so for the desirability of the homes as much as anything else. As a strongly introverted person myself, some of my favourite spaces at Little Kellum are the balconies and the roof terraces. And they don't need to be great in size at all, but just enough to give people places to spend private, quiet time in the fresh air, enjoying the views. And my final slide here, as my time is just about up, is really just to say that the story doesn't end here for CITU and Kellum Island, because due to the success of Little Kellum, we've acquired the site opposite, which is the site with the black dash edged around it, directly opposite the site that we're just coming to an end of. And we've started on there now, only last month, with a new scheme of 114 more houses, a whole mix of house types, including 3 and 4 bed homes again. We've also got in there more commercial space, and there'll be public gardens that we're creating in there as well for residents to use and enjoy. Not only the residents from Little Kellum, but from wider Kellum Island as a whole. Okay, thank you for listening to that quick whip through of the Kellum Island scheme.
Thank you very much, John, for your presentation. Sarah, could you play the video about Kellum Island? Is that possible?
Yes, I will certainly give it a go. If you just bear with me, please.
Of course. Thank you. Hopefully, if it works, we will just shortly have a video.
John, if you could just close down your presentation and stop sharing your screen, it may allow me to play it. Okay, I'll try now. No, sorry, I'm afraid it's not going to let me play it, I don't think. Sorry, I thought it would do, but it's not.
No worries, Sarah, but you can send a link to the delegates afterwards, can you?
Yeah, I'll definitely do that. Yeah, I'll send that round.
Yeah,
it is some nice drone footage.
That's great. Okay, so I then suggest we move on to our second part of our webinar, which is the panel discussion together with Sue Manns, John Cleveland, but then also Chris and Ben and their colleagues from KINF, and also Councillor Johnson. John, if I may just stick with your presentation, you've mentioned quite a lot of things, especially your sustainable approach, which CITU has with Little Kellum, and I think you could have drawn quite a lot of experience from that scheme. What are, if I may ask, what are the main lessons learned from Little Kellum from the last few years? Yep.
I ought to unmute before I start talking. Sorry. I think we've got it. I mean, there is an awful lot of learning. Yeah, we've been on site there many years, and no doubt the guys around the screen will have also had a lot of learning with us being on site during that time as well. I mean, I suppose on a practical level, as a business, we've done a huge amount of learning around developing that type of scheme, an environmentally sustainable scheme, in a neighbourhood such as Kellum, or as an edge of city neighbourhood, regardless. So in terms of the construction method that we use, we have had our fingers burnt and learnt an awful lot in trying to perfect that, for sure. So getting the air tightness right doesn't happen first time. It doesn't happen 10th time either. And so there's an extreme amount of effort and graft that's been put into that. But I think what we've also learned is probably a lot about the importance of communication. Communicating with both the residents that are buying our homes, but also those such as part of Kinker that are living in the area at the time. And actually, if you're a developer coming in and you're going to be making a fair bit of mess and noise for a considerable amount of time, it's important to really have a strong relationship with those who are already living there and listen to them, understand some of the issues that we're creating, as much as talk about the positives that they equally also see.
Of course, yeah. Just out of interest, I mean, with your approach to sustainably constructing, developing new homes, how much attention draws that from the whole of the development industry, and what have you noticed in the last few years in the region or beyond that?
I think climate change has had an increase in profile, hasn't it? Perhaps long overdue, but certainly over the last couple of years. But to be honest, I think building differently has been talked about and been on the agenda for the construction industry for many years, actually. And a fair few have tried it or looked into it. I think it's a slow process, and it will continue to be a slow process, mainly because it requires an awful lot of risk and an awful lot of investment and belief for developers to commit to that different approach. And until there are multiple schemes that you can actually point to, walk around and feel that are doing it and are successful, then it will always be seen as a risk and a big investment. So it'll take time.
Yeah, I see that.
Philip, if I can come in on that, so I think again from a local authority like planning officer, seeing a commercial company actually try to do eco homes it seems really rare. I don't think I've seen it anywhere else in my bit of North Derbyshire. Obviously, you see public sector looking to do it, but in terms of commercially, CITU they're kind of relatively rare, I think. I don't know about the wider experience of the RTPI, but it definitely does seem that it's quite a special attempt by a commercial company to do this.
Chris, if I may ask you a bit about the Neighbourhood Forum. I mean, if you look back the last 2 years or so, what do you think are the main challenges but also opportunities for Kellum Island in terms of development, and how could a neighbourhood plan positively contribute to the next few years in terms of planning?
Sure. Well, I mean, this is experiencing neighbourhood planning from the other side. In my day job as a planning officer down in Derbyshire, I occasionally have inquiries from our parishes, and I quite often think, I'm not sure it's something really that's going to be meaningful for you, because the level of resource you've got to put in, and if you don't want any more development, then my authority's planning for you, there's, you don't need to go down the neighbourhood plan route almost. You might do something else. It's for an area like Kellum though, which is an urban area, as you see, kind of changing from what it was to something new. An additional local policy, a local planning activity is quite a vital way of, it's meaningful here. In terms of resources, you've seen some of the steering group with me. Again, we'll probably remember David Cameron's launch of neighbourhood planning, and it's our chance to get involved in the running of the country, and in brackets, but not getting paid to do it. And that's quite a challenge. And because the people around this virtual table, you're a planner, I'm a planner, and President Sue's a planner, but the rest of the steering group on a learning experience, they're on a learning journey to try and understand planning, which I think as officers we kind of know can be quite complicated, and encouraging people to kind of take up and get involved in it is quite hard. Fortunately for Kellum, as Ben was saying, we've got quite a good kind of social capital. We've got there's a community alliance already kind of thinking about some of the things that we are now thinking about right from the outset. So, and we've got professional people in the community, different professions, but they've understood what it's like to run a business, to kind of bid for funding, to write documents. Not everywhere has that. A lot of inner city areas do not have that. So I think that kind of inherent kind of tension or challenge in neighbourhood planning, that it's done generally, you can get locality monies and things like that, but it's generally done by volunteers in addition to everything else they're doing. And there's a lot of rhetoric around neighbourhood planning at a national level, which then doesn't always tally up with what your experience is once you start doing it.
So it's based basically on a lot of resources, like in time but also financial resources, isn't it? So if I might bring you in at this point of the discussion, what do you think are main challenges but also opportunities for neighbourhood forums and groups in terms of neighbourhood planning?
Right, well, before I start and try and answer that, can I just say I am in absolutely no doubt why you won the Best Neighbourhood Award winning prize there last year. Absolutely incredible what you've done. And again, before I sort of try and get onto that, just to pick up on something that Chris said about sort of giving that advice to other groups. I think you've achieved an awful lot based on voluntary time and input from the steering group and from the neighbourhood forum and from the community. And that's something that we often forget in planning, that when we go out and we consult, we're actually asking people to give their time and their knowledge to us for nothing. And then we take it to use hopefully in their interest. So it's about everyone coming together and giving time in whatever way they can. So I think it's absolutely fantastic what you've done. And right, so back to your question, what would be the advice, wasn't it, for someone setting up a neighbourhood forum or doing something? My advice actually would be to go and talk to people who've actually done it. That is the best way, because we can come in from outside and we can give a view, but nothing is like having that experience yourself. And I think listening to you all, what came across in the presentations was actually your reflections, and also in Chris's answer, reflections on what works and what doesn't work. And that's the sort of thing that we can share. And if I had a wish, it would be lovely to have that sort of opportunity to connect people and put people together and try and learn from the experiences of others. But I think the other point that Chris also picked up is that every neighbourhood is very different. And you've clearly got the advantage where you are of having people with knowledge and experience and time and those professional skills. And I think that came across very much from what Ben was saying as well, that adds an awful lot. So it's how can we actually then help those areas that haven't got that? And I'd love to see some form, personal view very much, some form of mentoring that could go on to sort of take one of those other communities sort of under the arm and start to help build their capacity to actually take something like something similar to what you've done forward. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes, of course. Councillor Johnson, if I may ask, what are your experience in the last few years with Kellum Island, its local residents, and how the whole bit comes together, basically, in terms of planning, in terms of development, and all that?
Well, Kellum Island's just a fantastic community, and I've been interesting. So I actually live just up the hill on the other side, and I've been looking down for Kellum Island over the last 20 or 25 years, and it's really interesting to see how it's grown. So the point is, this isn't a development, it isn't a community that's just been imposed. It's grown and evolved from nothing. One of the very strong points about Kellum Island is that it isn't a process of gentrification, in the sense that because it was an industrial area, no one was forced out of their homes to build this. It started many years ago when there was, genuine planning concern about what was happening to the, very big and important industrial buildings there, and some of the initial conversions were done. And importantly, they were done to a high quality. And that made something of the area's identity. And that's led to people wanting to be part of that community because it's got something special. So it's a classic of heritage-led regeneration, as Chris said. And then with CITU coming on board, as been pointed out, CITU's pretty well a unique developer in this area. And certainly say as a councillor, yeah, I do get certain complaints about CITU and so on. I won't pretend that doesn't happen. But it's really important to actually step back and say, well, actually, step out of the day-to-day complaints. It's really positive that we've got a house builder that's building good quality family-sized homes. So Sheffield City Centre, I think it's fair to say, is being a bit blighted by these very small student flats at the moment. There is simply not enough family housing. And what we're seeing in Kellum Island is there is a mix of that, and that's really, really important. When it comes to neighbourhood planning, my observations are simply that actually neighbourhood planning is really, really difficult. It's a reflection on the Kellum Island community that people here have picked it up and be able to make a go of it. It's not an easy process, and simply there isn't enough support for that from local authorities or central government, because as Sue said, you need to go and talk to people who've done it, and there aren't enough people out there. It's definitely something that the government could promote with, for government, very small sums of money, but for communities and planners actually quite significant sums to make it happen. I could talk forever, so I better stop.
No worries. John, if I may ask, some of the attendees, I think they're well aware of the Climate Innovation District in Leeds. So that's a resident or mixed-use development on a much larger scale than in Sheffield. Were you able to transfer and to adopt experience based on the experiences you've learned from Little Kellum, and also in terms of engaging with local communities and local residents? There might be not that many, but have you taken on that experience from Sheffield a little bit?
Yeah, I'm sure that is the case. Yeah. So again, it's probably split both in terms of our knowledge of what we're doing, or what we're building. That's certainly advanced and being taken on board up in Leeds. So I didn't mention in the presentation, but the homes down at Little Kellum to date have not been manufactured by ourselves. There's a third parties manufactured the panels, and then they're then put together on site. Since we started down Little Kellum, we've opened up our own factory doing that, so manufacturing our own panels. Those are the things that are being used up in Leeds now, and will be used back in Little Kellum over the road and the new site that I spoke of. I suppose the thing that strikes me that we've been able to take forward as well is confidence. Which is easy to say, but it certainly goes a long way. So to know that what we build actually, when it's there, is embraced and sought after by paying customers is an extremely good boost, and allows you to do bigger and bolder developments elsewhere, in the knowledge that just because you don't see developments like Little Kellum all across the country yet, if you do it, then people appreciate it and recognise what it can bring to them. So confidence is a big aspect of what I think we've learned. And sure, communication again, as I mentioned in response to the first question. I think right from the start, in the CID, it was necessary to really increase the amount of information sharing that we have with our initial residents, and really explain to them what we're doing, why we're doing it, how much it's going to inconvenience them, but also get them on board to really support and back us. And that is certainly again an experience that we're having up in Leeds. Not that we're not having it down in Sheffield, but as I say, if you're building somewhere for 6 years or so, you go through rocky patches.
Sue, since you've becoming president at the beginning of this year, have you come across other developers who have a similar approach than CITU in terms of building sustainable homes and almost passive house standard houses?
Well, it's obviously my year has not been quite the year that I would have expected, and certainly it probably goes for everyone, doesn't it? Which has meant that the ability to visit in person and actually get to see some of these things, very, very limited. But what I have had the opportunity to do, and this was at the back end of last year as Vice President, I was actually one of the judges on the Housing Awards. And the category that I was looking at included a lot of the passive house type developments. And there were some amazing ones that were sort of spread around the country. And certainly one of the ones that I was involved in that was a winner was based out in Glasgow. And that was a restoration of an old church. So a similar sort of old industrial, well, not industrial, really ecclesiastical building, but an old building, which was listed, and then building new apartments next to it and actually joining. So all the heritage issues that John very well described at Little Kellum, they actually came together and they managed to develop that at the passive house standard. So there are examples out there, but what I'd love that to be is not that we keep saying, oh, here's a great example, but this is normal. And so it's almost taken as an everyday thing. It's accepted that that's how it should be. And that's where we've got to move to. So it's the normal. Maybe it'll be the new normal, let's hope. Because unlike COVID, where that suddenly came around the corner and we weren't expecting it, we've had ample warning of the climate change issues. We've known about them for so long, and we really have got to step up our game in the way we start to respond. So I think everything that John's been doing, absolutely fantastic, and I just hope that it spreads out much more widely as people see those real benefits and appreciate the need for it.
Absolutely, yeah. Chris or Douglas or John, would you have questions for Sue at this point?
Silence.
Possibly. Question.
Possibly.
The question, Sue, is what can be done to make it happen? I mean, I would just love to see passive house being the standard, the minimum standard for anything new. How do we make it happen?
Sadly, I think it's got to be regulations, hasn't it? Because the natural thing, John's probably agreeing there, so I'll let him step in on this one. But the natural thing is that, you know, we tend to not do things, this is human nature, isn't it, unless we actually have to. That's probably where it's got to start from. John, I think you're probably far better placed on this one.
I think you're absolutely right. No, I think it's policy change that needs to enforce it. It's as simple as that. I think both that being planning policy and then the regulatory the regulations that come with that. It's a big risk. Developers building houses for good reason don't quickly change what they're doing because it threatens their financial viability, and so you don't, you know, so in order for them to take that risk and make that change, it needs to be a requirement.
I think, yeah, from like a planning policy point of view, we're very aware that having to demonstrate the soundness of a plan to kind of get these burdens put in, whole plan viability, in some ways it's a way of going over and above building regs. But I think that is the answer, isn't it? Actually building regs, because that gives everyone the level playing field across the country. And I know for about 15 years ago, there was a review about the building regs and could we move to a more Scandinavian model with triple kind of clad buildings. And it was, I think they just assumed that, well, they looked and the house building industry could not change quickly from brick construction, with one cavity, to a much more much more energy efficient version. And to a degree, with the financial crash and all of the things that kind of undid in terms of construction, we've not really progressed that far. And I think that's partly why John's and CITU's development still seems quite rare. Yes, you get the architectural led, occasional couple of cool historic building conversions. You get the public sector or Prince's Trust, trying to do it. But that's why I always keep coming back to the fact that a commercial developer doing this, trying it out. I mean, and I think in some ways the best sign we've got in our area is that CITU want to do more. The market is proven. People will buy these houses. We've got a community saying we want bigger homes, not just boxes, tiny boxes. We're looking for that bigger unit, and that has given CITU, to a degree, I think the sales has given them commercial confidence to keep going.
Certainly has, yeah. We would not have started Over the Road if we didn't think that actually that was going to be a success. We wouldn't have been able to finance the scheme from the outset.
Thank you. If I can just add that the RTPI campaign Plan the World We Need, which has just had its first 100 days, is actually all about planning for a greener recovery from COVID-19. And some of the key things are exactly what John's been describing in terms of the C2 homes, and also raising that point about retrofitting. We don't want to be in the position where we're building things now and then we're having to retrofit afterwards. So that campaign is very much sort of striking home at the moment with government. It was referenced in the white paper, and let's hope some of those things actually get taken forward.
Certainly, yeah. If I may briefly come back to neighbourhood planning in terms of neighbourhood forum Kellum Island. Brooke, Rob and Anders, what would you think? What are the main issues and the main topics for the neighbourhood plan, so to speak, for the drafting the plan? What are the burning issues for you?
Well, if I can give my sense of that, it would be that the three people that you've mentioned there, Philip, have never done anything like this before. So it's a complete voyage of discovery for us. We've all had different experiences, work experiences over the years, but we've never done a neighbourhood plan. So by that very nature, it's a first for all of us. So I think Chris maybe mentioned that we're on a steep learning curve, and at times it does feel like we need crampons.
Yeah, I think I just agree with what Rob said. It's something that most of us haven't done before. It's something that we didn't realise how many different sections there are to it and different procedures, and actually it's one of those things that could be a full-time job in addition to what you're currently doing, which I suppose from what Chris said earlier, you are doing something, but you're doing it for free. David Cameron set this up so you didn't have to pay people to do it in some way. But yeah, but it's really interesting, and actually, as not only working on KIMP, I both live and work on Kellum Island, so I don't leave the island very often. So actually, what it goes on there is quite important for both me actually doing my day-to-day job as well as actually having my social life. So it's something that's very, very key, and that's for quite a lot of us on the group. We do live out on the island, so it's important, and therefore we're kind of finding out about more of the history. I already work for Kellum Island Museum, which is part of Sheffield Industrial Museums Trust. So it's great that I do have quite a good background knowledge in terms of what was there, but I'm still discovering new things. And that's through this project, not actually through my work at the museum, which is really interesting.
I think from my point of view, I think the thing that's been interesting is that we've had a lot of meetings over the years where people have strong opinions about the area. And I think, as Ben said earlier in his presentation, that people have a tendency to come along to a meeting and have a moan, but he's actually then trying to channel that into something useful. So it's been interesting to be part of actually how can we turn people's opinions in the area into actually something that will make a long-term difference and hopefully improve the area, so that we're not just coming on to meetings and having a moan, but actually we're being constructive and able to point the area in the direction that we want. I think has been the real positive of being part of this.
Yeah.
But I just add there, Philip, I think one of the other benefits that we've experienced is through the kind of consultation process, is actually just going out there and meeting the people in the community. That's been a great kind of side benefit, if you like, from all of this.
Yeah. I would like to move on to our last bit of our webinar, which is the question and answer session. If I might just briefly remind attendees, we have already received quite a lot of questions at this point. Please do type in them and put more questions to our panel. I just want to remind you, if you ask a question, maybe you also type in brackets who you want to ask the question, because our panel is quite, we're plenty of people, aren't we? So that would be helpful. I would start off with the first question, which I have from Gimin Lee. In terms of community markets, as part of community involvement projects, one, where is it held in Kellum Island? And second, how to organize the market, such as how as many days as a week to open, who participates in selling, only locals, for example, and what is the main selling products? Is it farmers markets or do they sell basic needs? Ben, do you want to take this one? Yeah.
Okay, so we started the market really to try and encourage people to mix, and so it was really intended as a very local exercise. There are a number of other farmers markets across Sheffield, so we visited them and we had a rummage around and talked to the people who organised theirs, and they'd been organised for far longer than ours. We, as I mentioned earlier, we don't have any open community space here. So we make use of the bridge. So one of the bridges, Ball Street Bridge, the council gives us permission to close off. And initially we tried to encourage as many local producers as possible. So it was a mix of people providing organic vegetables or homemade cakes or candles or all sorts of things. Plus we also have a number of hot food vendors who are also local. So it was almost a variety of different foods, cocktail, horse box, all sorts of things. We have stalls that we also have for charities. So one of our early adopted charities was Assist, which is a refugee. It's a charity for refugees, local one in Sheffield. And so they have a table and they bring refugees to manage and they sell goods which have been made. We also have other charities. So we have a wildlife charity that comes, a local wildlife charity. They have a stall. The police also have a stall because we have a good relationship with our local police and PCSOs. And so they get a stall as well. They pay for it, of course. And the charities don't pay for their stalls. And so we have a variety. We have people who sell clothes. We have people who make things, electronic things. It's a neighbourhood that has lots of makers. So there are lots of people who can actually have stalls. And we try and keep the price down as much as possible, although it is a fundraiser for us for our other projects. and we also have some entertainment. It was a steep learning curve in the beginning because we had no idea how to set one of these things up with the logistics or the legality of it. So it took a lot of effort to try and find the licensing department and the markets licensing department and et cetera, et cetera. But it's quite a smooth operation now. There's a team of people who do it, and of course they spreadsheet it to death. So it's very well organised, and it goes quite well. We've cancelled them this year because of obviously because of COVID-19, but they're very popular. They're only one day, so we only do it on a Sunday because that's the day that we could get the closure on the bridge because of the traffic. But now if we get the bridge, because it's closed already at the moment on a semi-permanent basis, if we can get it permanently closed, we can hold many more things on the bridge whenever we want. So that's one of the...
Thank you very much, Ben. I've got another question for Chris and John from Lee Sturck, asking how do you think that your Kellum ambitions fit with the council's Sheffield Council's Central Area Strategy 2020, and do you think that there are good lessons to apply in the other city centre areas or neighbourhoods?
Sure. So if I start on that one, Philip, we've got again a good relationship with the planning department, as you know, it's crucial in a way. As part of that, they offered a presentation to the forum and to I think the other 3 or 4 neighbourhood fora kind of across Sheffield to present to the community what the options document, what it is, what it talks about, what options are, and I think the steering group as a whole kind of found that very valuable, very useful to kind of hear it again from like the horse's mouth in a way. This is kind of, here's what is being planned. Obviously, it's quite a high-level document. Sheffield is still trying to establish what strategy for growth and in terms of geographic strategy, hence the 3 options currently of lots in the centre, option A, option C, using Greenbelt, option B, perhaps a Goldilocks, somewhere between the 2, kind of those kind of things. And it's, you know, so for us, we've got the main issues like the timetables. You know, to a degree, neighbourhood plans and local plans kind of sit well, one hangs from the other in a way, but they can have rival visions for an area, and often then it comes down to the timetable of who progresses quickest, kind of gets, you know, to set the vision for the area. So now partly we wish Sheffield well, but you know, our influence will be kind of greater if we can come forward in advance of them. It's quite, yeah, it's relatively, I mean, anyone, the panelists or the attendees will know the kind of the sitting, how they relate to each other is quite a complicated matter. Still comes down to decisions being made by planning committee or officers in delegation. But having at the minute, I mean, option A, as I think as the city have set out, we can see that means more development in our area in terms of housing numbers. The land is fixed, it's where it is. So the only real variable you've got then is how dense that is. And I think one of the considerations that we have as a neighbourhood forum is, do we feel threatened, or do we feel that could lead to the kind of developments that we, you know, might go against what our vision is? We've through the presentation, you'll have heard the kind of views of looking to be that more of a mixed, you know, larger mixed units, also 3-4 bed units, family homes. If those kind of things are lost in the drive to achieve a very high housing target for this area, so that doesn't seem to sit very well, does it? We'll have to see how the city responds to the comments that we make to them, to find out exactly how they deal with us. But I think, yeah, there's those tensions kind of in there. I can understand it. I could talk about it for quite some time, but I won't. But that's, yeah, so it's kind of, there will be a tension between what we do and what the city does, and to a degree it's who gets through the process quicker, I suspect, and that's assuming that the applications don't come in and just obliterate all the plan making anyway.
Sure. John, do you want to add anything?
Well, I'd just back up what Chris has said there. I think, if the strategy is for more homes in edge of city centre sites and in the city centre itself, personally, I agree with that. I think it makes sense. It can't be homes at any cost, and so it has to be a well planned and well thought through scheme on the copious amount of sites that there are actually around Sheffield's edge of centre. There are a lot, and it's not about just whacking them up high. We can deliver the numbers in the city and still also plan sustainable neighbourhoods. Simple as that.
True. I've got another question from Richard Holmes about businesses in the neighbourhood. I mean, maybe Ben or Rob or Anders, you could help out with that. Richard is asking, can you say something about your aims and ambitions for existing and new businesses in the area, bearing in mind the competition from housing for land and space?
So I'll just kick off. So earlier, when we looked at the area, you can see that the area is split with the river. So on one side, it's mainly residential, although not exclusively, and on the other side, it's mainly manufacturing and small businesses, although not exclusively. Our side of the river, so where we are on Kellum Island, is an industrial conservation area. So there are some little regulations there that protect in terms of height of buildings and things like that, but not always, because there's always a loophole. If it's a gateway or something like that, then it can be any height. But on the Neepsend side, there are no regulations like that. So and one of the things when we did in the consultation for the Neighbourhood Forum, people were very, very, very strong and vocal about the fact that the ones who lived here came here also because of the Neepsend side, because of the industrial side. They want the businesses to continue there. That's part of the charm, industrial charm of the area. So there was a very strong feeling from residents that they want to keep Neepsend, or they want to encourage Neepsend to continue and evolve as a working area. And however that, whether it's producing things or whether it's designing things or whatever. So I think, and there is a tension, because lots of those old factories on that side are people's pension pots. The land is their pension pot. So if a developer comes along and says, oh, here's a couple of million, can I have your site? They may well do that, and they may try and put up a tower block or something like that. But anyway, that's just my bit.
I can actually just wanted to add, I think one of the very attractive aspects of Kellum Island and Neepsend is that mix that you get between the kind of old industrial type businesses and also the more modern businesses, those that have come in, the restaurants, the bars, and the artist community as well that was mentioned earlier. So it's that mix that I think that we would all want to see maintained, because it makes the place something quite unique and quite special. So we definitely want that to be encouraged and develop further.
Philip, if I can just add, so and again, that consultation statement I talked about in my presentation, again, the communities, the residential bit of the community doesn't really want to be squeezing out the workers who were here before. I think Councillor Douglas was saying that it's not not gentrification because there weren't people living here, but it kind of carries over that we might be not intentionally, but by the market recognizing the value in the land that's currently industrial. And as Ben was saying, generally you can sell your land once, and people try to get the best value out of it, understandably. That market will squeeze out the industrial if we're not careful. But this is one of the things that the neighbourhood plan can do and will be required to do, is actually to say, where should that change stop? Where should we protect And that's one of the things that if our business lead was on the call today, because he's running about 3 businesses, so that's why he's not here today. But if he was here today, he'd say that we've actually, that's engaging with the business community, because that's not only the people who own the land and the premises, it's also the business who sometimes are renting from someone else, or the employees that are working for someone. So but the neighbourhood plan, it will have to say something about that, because it's right and that it does, because it's one of the key changes that's going to happen to our area. And so it's right and proper, if the community want a voice on how that changes, the neighbourhood plan is the place for that.
Yeah. Sue, do you wanted to add something to that in terms of local businesses and neighbourhood forums?
Nothing in particular, other than just to comment that I think it really is important what you're saying about bringing everybody together and having a mixed use community. That connects with what John was saying, it connects with the zero carbon agenda. It's about having that holistic view, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yep. I'll just move on to a next question from Bob Wolf. He was asking, to what extent do you consider that the Kellum Island project overall has been supported by Sheffield City Council planning or by other parts of the council structure or finance? Maybe Chris or maybe Ben, you're right placed, I think, to answer the question.
I think if actually we do this in tandem, so if Ben goes first and then I'll follow up, because there's different.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah.
So we spent a lot of time over the last 3 years cultivating personal contacts with the city council. So we've had, I'm not blowing his trumpet too much, but we've had tremendous support from our local councillors. So particularly Douglas, Martin and Ruth, we have 3 councillors for the city centre, and they've been brilliant supporting us. But we also had engaged with the people in charge of streets, highways, bin collection, all the kind of things that people are constantly complaining about or looking at. And we've engaged successfully, but it's been a slow burn. It hasn't happened overnight. It's taken a bit of persistence, and there are many of us, in fact, all the people around here are quite persistent. And it's been based on trying to get people, because we're a nice area, it's easy to get people from the council to come down and have a drink in the pub and talk about things, because they do that anyway, rather than having to do it in an office. And that kind of helps. When we did Ball Street Bridge and we got the closure, the licensing department guy came down who licenses the road closures, and we gave him a free lunch and and a beer, and he's been fantastic ever since. I'm not saying that's bribery, but I think it's they kind of saw that we were serious and not all up in the clouds about things, and they saw how well organised all our team is. So that kind of thing helps. Yeah.
And so the other kind of part of it, I think it probably shows the actual kind of integrity and professionalism of planners, that the charm offensive lobbying that Ben was describing, that works well to kind of get engagement from lots of council services and the members, because we're involved in a quasi-judicial process. There has to be that a little bit of standoff, kind of as a planning inspector will do at an appeal, where there's that kind of, I can't be shown to be smoozing with you because I've got a decision to make over here. So I think that kind of Ben's explanation of how the community alliances try to engage with the council, and that has brought lots of benefits. Planning kind of doesn't fit nicely into that kind of way, which again as a professional at RTPI, it's part of our job to be a little bit distant, but there's also that kind of aspect. So one of the things I've tried to do as I've been involved, because I'm a planner, I can talk a bit of the planning speak with the officers and kind of say, well, this is these are the concerns. I understand where your thoughts and where your pressures. I think it's fair to say that Sheffield City Council Planning Department has undergone quite a traumatic year or so with cuts. Now, speaking from an outsider, you can kind of see the impacts that has led, so priorities, teams have changed, people have gone, and that causes quite a lot of disruption. It means people who we were talking to perhaps aren't there anymore. So that's an impact. I mean, again, the heritage sides, because we've talked about the conservation area, heritage-led regeneration, that's kind of what happened early on. And those resources, but again, the city have looked at, changing those, reducing those resources. And that's some of the background that's there. I think also because Sheffield planners, local planning team has got a plan to produce, they understandably have to prioritise that because they're quite an old plan, as we talked about. So they understandably can't give us, say, as much resource as Leeds would do to their neighbourhood fora. So it's, again, I can understand those things. I think legally it's not actually defined how much resource a planning authority has to give to a neighbourhood forum. It's just they have to support them. And if you wanted a definitive answer of how much, you'd probably have to go to court. So they've been quite good engagement. The planning officers want the best for the city and for our area. I think that comes across when you talk to them. A planning guild moment, but it is a matter of resources and partly that professionalism that has to pull them away from being seen to be too influenced by schmoozing, I suspect.
Thanks for that, Chris.
Can I just quickly add to that?
Oh, yeah.
One of the things around engaging with the council, whether it's the planning department or whether it's anything else, is that we've tried, not that we have to try too hard, is to be accommodating, so that when we engage with them, it's engaging constructively rather than saying we want this or we don't want this. And it's been the same with the planning department as well, so that when people engage with us, they think, oh my God, these are people who are not going to kind of shout and scream at us and everything else. And so it's easier for them to come to us and talk to us about various things, even if it's not the planning, but for the other things like services and things like that, because when their councils come down to present things, we're not throwing beer cans at them and saying, oh, bloody council, they're horrible. It's a more positive feedback they get.
Absolutely. I'm mindful of time. It's just a few minutes until 3:30. I have a few last questions left for John, and I think I would then conclude and give just a bit of an outlook of our upcoming webinars for RTPI Yorkshire. So, John, if I may ask you a few questions, the last 3 bits. Robin Hughes asked, what design life does the wooden construction give the CITU homes? Bob Wolf, he has asked, what level of affordable housing is there in the CITU scheme? And last but not least, Gimin Lee was asking about, regarding the family houses, the garden houses, is a shared garden only for residents who can afford to paying the rent? Yeah, that's those 3.
Okay. Also conscious of time, I'll whip through those. You might have to remind me of those questions as we go along. In terms of the life, 60 to 80 years, they're mortgageable properties. So now they're backed by all the main mortgage lenders. So they're given the same lifespan as any other home would be. Question 2.
About the affordable homes.
Oh God, tell me that one again. Sorry, Philip.
Yeah, there was what part of houses are affordable on the scheme?
So there aren't. So in terms of technically affordable, as far as the 80% of market rent, affordable rented homes, there aren't any on the scheme at all. And that's really driven by, I mean, again, we'd look to planning policy to drive that, and Sheffield's policy is that in this area of the city, there is no requirement for affordable housing.
Okay, I see. And I think you've asked already you answered already the last question about the shared garden, because it can be used by everyone. It's not for renting, basically.
Yeah, those garden houses themselves there, so that because it's first floor and you access it out of your back door, it comes access to that garden comes when you buy the house.
Yeah.
So that's where that comes. If it was on the ground floor, and then that might be different. But yeah, the ones I showed on the slide, you have to go up to your first floor in order to get out onto it.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, John. Thank you very much all for attending at the panel and answering many questions. We've still got a few questions left, and hopefully we can answer those questions by writing and coming back to you on those. Many thanks for all who have attended. Thank you very much, Sue, for joining us and having the time to do so. Thank you all for you to attend at this panel. That was really, I think, a helpful discussion, and was really good to have lots of questions about Kellum Island in general, but also Little Kellum. I just wanted to mention a few things at the end. Please, everyone, get involved on Twitter and follow us on Twitter at RTPI _Yorks. Also, please do tell what you think on Twitter and complete the RTPI survey, which will appear once this webinar finishes. Make also sure that you've subscribed on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/the-RTPI. So you're getting the latest videos. Also, this webinar will be recorded, and you can find it on YouTube. As I said, I also wanted just to quickly remind you that we've got other RTPI webinars coming up from the RTPI Yorkshire. Our next one is on the 5th of November about learning from Hamburg, lessons for UK planners from one of Europe's most dynamic cities. That's from our Yorkshire International Group. We've also got the RTPI Yorkshire Awards for Planning Excellence. So this is a Yorkshire event on the 17th of November 2020, which I think will be very exciting, because this year we've got 20 entries, so that's a huge number, and we are very, very happy about that. And we've also got the annual lecture coming up with Councillor Mullerine from Leeds City Council, addressing inequality, the future of planning in one of the UK's fastest growing cities, on the 25th of November. So thanks again. Thank you very much for attending, and everyone, please keep in touch and have a look what's coming up on the RTPI channel 2020 and also the RTPI Yorkshire. Thank you very much for attending. Thanks a lot. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.